shutting down a city commission meeting seeking justice for the death of 26-year-old Patrick Lyoya. Now, this body camera footage from April 4th shows the deadly encounter after a traffic stop. Moments later, Lyoya ran away, leading to a struggle with the officer. Officer Chris Schur then shot him in the back of the head after yelling for Lyoya to let go of his taser. The county prosecutor is now reviewing the investigation by Michigan State Police and will determine if the officer now faces charges. Judith and Maya are now back with us to discuss the latest in the case. And Maya, as you've been watching the details come in, advocates calling for transparency since this happened on April 4th. But then we get into the details, right? 3 weeks for police to release the officer's name. Just one of those. Why 3 weeks? How are we still having the same conversations about transparency and accountability with cases like this, nearly 2 years after the death of George Floyd?
Yeah, sadly, the problem has been that we've not had sufficient will to actually change our accountability structure. I mean, for example, as we know, there were tried to win federal legislation that would create more accountability after George Floyd was so brutally murdered in such a long and painful video. And I think the thing that should concern us in particular here is, remember that excessive force, deadly force, is it's deadly force. It becomes excessive when you don't have reason to use it. You're not supposed to use deadly force unless the person, you have reason to believe the person is dangerous in the process of doing something that's going to be a danger to the officer or others, or, you know, may cause danger to someone, inflict harm as they're fleeing. The only thing that is going on here is a routine traffic stop. There's no indication that we have in any of the public record that Mr. Lyoya was believed to have engaged in any serious crime, was any threat, had any weapon. And so the only thing we should see is that there's a police officer on top of him when he is face down and he is shot in the back of the head. That's the public record. That cries out for a very different kind of accountability. And that accountability also has to start with why that kind of traffic stop turned into that kind of incident to begin with.
You know, and Judith, as Maya digs into some more details around this very case, and we'll go back to the very body camera footage that I was mentioning moments ago, that it took several weeks for us to understand even the name. And it's different based on the cases we've seen in recent years. It could be weeks, it could be months before you even get these kinds of details. And when you look at the patchwork of the way that these pieces of data, these pieces of evidence are released to the public, it's a patchwork. How do we get around that so that there is transparency in these cases that seem to have so much difficulty in consistent understanding and transparency for us as the public to watch and understand?
Well, I think this is to Maya's point around the lack of accountability. We continue to see places where the police departments and police officers have incredible amount of protections. Some of those protections come actually in their police union contracts, where it's not just about benefits and conditions of employment, but they also get protections that allow for this kind of evidence to not be produced. But then also, you know, one of the things that is really troubling about what is happening in Grand Rapids, that the community is calling for a special prosecutor also, because we know that time and again, the local prosecutor typically has an interdependent relationship with the police, and therefore is not always unbiased when it comes to prosecuting police officers. And then the last thing I want to mention about this particular case is that, as Maya talked about routine traffic stops, unfortunately, too often, so-called routine traffic stops are deadly for Black and brown motorists. And so we have to be thinking about a different way, because these, too often, people are stopped because of their race. And then when they are stopped, they are victims of misconduct, brutality, and sometimes deadly use of force. And so, was that stop really necessary? Was that use of force excessive? Yes, it was. And unfortunately, time and again, that police live above the law. And so I'm worried about what the outcome will be here.
All right, Judith and Maya, thank you so much. Really appreciate your thoughts on this very difficult topic. Next for you, Republican claims of voter fraud widely debunked, but it's still very much a part of their political playbook. We're going to look at how it could all have an impact in the midterms.
We hit the bike trails every weekend.
Jingles doesn't care.